Good morning, everybody, and a warm welcome to this morning's webinar stroke conference titled Community and Dementia, Creating Better Lives in Edinburgh and the Lothians. It's my pleasure to be your chair for this morning, and I am Professor Brendan McCormack from Queen Margaret University, where I'm head of the divisions of nursing, occupational therapy and art therapies, among other things. And I'm delighted to be the chair for this morning's event, Creating Better Lives. I've got a few things to do before we get going with the main part of the day. So I'll just give a little bit of background and then give a little bit of the housekeeping and then a quick overview of the program. And then we will get launched into the main program of the day. And thank you all very much for joining us for this really important and special event. So today's event is one in a series of Creating Better Lives regional events that the Life Changes Trust has been running since 2018. So far, they have held events in the Highlands, in Grampian, in Orkney, in the Western Isles, and most recently in Ayrshire and Arran. For each of these events, the Life Changes Trust works in partnership with local stakeholders, people living with dementia, unpaid carers of those with dementia, and those in the community who support individuals, families, or local projects. These partnerships are set up for the planning and development of each event so that they are relevant to and led by local communities themselves. And this event is no exception to that, where it has been amazing local engagement and partnership working. So for the past few months, the Trust has been working in partnership with individuals and organisations from across Edinburgh and the Lothians to design this free conference so that it truly reflects on and celebrates what has been happening locally to support people living with dementia and their families. By doing this, the Trust learns from them about what the local priorities are for these more specifically, and we'll be hearing a lot more about that later. So what are the gaps in services that need to be provided? What have been some of the struggles during the COVID pandemic? And what has worked well? And what people living with dementia and unpaid carers are saying is most important to them? These are all things that are going to be picked up on throughout this morning's event. So these events are designed to help support local services and all of us for that matter, to think more deeply about how community can uphold the human rights of people with dementia and unpaid carers. So I hope that gives you a flavour of what we're about this morning and a lead in to some of the things that you're going to be hearing about in much more detail as the morning progresses. But before we get into that, just a few quick housekeeping points that you should bear in mind whilst we're online for this event. We have got a break scheduled for the program, but if at any time you need to take a break, please step away from the screen and do so. We are all spending so much time on screens these days that it's really important to take regular breaks. So if you are beginning to struggle at all with your attention, then step away even for a moment will help you to stay the course of the event and enjoy the experience. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on the Life Changes Trust website, and that will be available in a few days' time. So if you have to step away for any reason, then don't worry, you will be able to catch up on what you have missed through the recording. And there will be a message coming out to everybody to let you know when this recording is available. There are 2 question and answer sessions during this event. And if you would like to ask a question of the speakers or of the panel, then you are more than welcome to do so, and we would encourage you to do so. But you won't be asking the question directly. What we would like to invite you to do is to post your questions in the Q&A section. So you can do that through the general comments or the chat, which you will see on your screen. And then those questions will come to me and I will field them on your behalf during the Q&A session. And I promise to retain their authenticity and not interpret them to my own ends in any way. So that's all of our housekeeping for today. So on to today's event. As I said, this programme has been organised in partnership with Edinburgh and East Lothian community engagements and a whole array of partners who are committed to better lives for persons living with dementia. And throughout the morning, we'll be seeing a variety of activities and profiling of work, as well as the hearing about the priorities work itself. So you will hear some films, or see some films even, and hear about local projects from individuals across Edinburgh and the Lothians, highlighting the work that they are continuing to deliver and the support they're continuing to provide during this COVID period, which is so important. We will hear from Dementia Friendly East Lothian and the work that they've been doing in partnership with Capital Theatres, which is really exciting. We will also hear from the carers of West Lothian and the care that they are providing and the support they're providing to a particular carer who is Jill, who will be talking about her experience a bit later. We'll also be hearing from the Eric Liddell Centre here in Edinburgh and the way that they have been adapting their services to support people living with dementia during COVID-19. We will also be sharing with you what people living with dementia, their carers, and those who work with them at Edinburgh and the Lothians say about their priorities. And will form a lot of the part of the Q&A sessions, I guess, and the kind of things that are emerging from those conversations work. So we have quite a packed program, but some really interesting projects being profiled and some really interesting issues around the priorities and the discussions that we might have around that. So I think we're in for a packed, full of fun and exciting, but important work this morning. So lots to get through, and it's now my time to start to introduce our first sessions. So to get started, I'd like to start with a lovely film featuring the work of Forget Me Notes, the Forget Me Notes Choir. The Forget Me Notes project is a charity that uses music to build community and combat isolation in a variety of settings. They aim to use music to build an inclusive community of warmth, openness, and understanding, and to build environments where self-expression is encouraged and welcomed. The choir, based in Edinburgh, was formed more than 6 years ago and is built upon dementia-friendly values and is open to all. But I will let them tell you their story.
Welcome to the Forget Me Notes project. We're a charity that uses music to build community and combat isolation. We're built on dementia-friendly values and are open to all. Music is powerful. It can move us to joy or sadness. It is present one way or another throughout our entire lives. In an instant, it can bring to mind those we love. It can transport us back to a significant point in time. As we sing together in our community choir and in our workshops, we share an experience, express emotions. We get to know each other and stand with each other. We create a space where everyone is included and each person is valued.
Our choir is made up of people like you, and we would be delighted if you wanted to come and join us. The Forget Me Notes project is taking its values and ways of working to different places. We offer music workshops in care homes and community settings. We deliver training programs to staff on how to use music more effectively with vulnerable people. If you think we can work with you to provide a meaningful event for people, then we would love to hear from you. The Forget Me Not project is about enablement, empowerment, and providing environments of achievement for all. Now, who wouldn't want to be a part of that?
Wow, what an amazing film. And who wouldn't be touched by seeing that? It just operates on so many levels, which I'm sure many of you are reflecting on and engaged with right now. And maybe you haven't even stopped singing along, which would be fantastic. Fantastic film, and thank you to everybody for showcasing that. It's just such a powerful demonstration of the power of human touch and voice, actually. So brilliant. So to move on to our next section, which is all about local priorities, which I'm sure many of you on this webinar are really interested to hear more about. We've got two parts to this section of the programme. In a little while, we're going to hear from Shona Carey from the Village Storytelling Centre. And the Village Storytelling Centre has been facilitating these storytelling engagement sessions with local communities around Scotland. And this storytelling approach, which is an amazingly powerful and creative approach, manages to help people to unpack their stories, to engage with their stories of everyday life, and to turn them into priorities that are important, not just for them, but for everyone in their community. These stories become everyone's story at some point. So these storytelling sessions use a lot of creative methods to support people to tell their story, but are also very gentle and very practical and very engaging. So we'll hear from Shona in a little while, but first we're going to have a short film featuring Sam Rowe. And at Trust Creating Better Lives in Ayrshire and Arran conference last year, Sam Rowe from the Village Storytelling Centre explained what storytelling is about.
Good morning, everybody. I'm not Arlene, I am Sam, you might notice that. I work for an organisation called the Village Storytelling Centre, and over the last year we've been working with the Life Changes Trust to develop this storytelling approach, which you might have heard being talked about. And so I just want to tell you a little bit about the process that has led us to the priorities that you'll find on your table. We are an organisation that uses storytelling to support communities to find their voice. We've been working in collaboration with another storyteller called Claire Hewitt, who has a background in the Living Voices project, which worked in care homes across Scotland, gathering stories from the residents there. Our workshops, which we've been instigating, they normally begin by gathering everyone together, and we always start off with a song and a traditional story. And that just gives a feeling for, this is a different kind of meeting. Claire put it really nicely, I think, when she said people think they're coming to a meeting, and what we try to create is the atmosphere of gathering around a kitchen table just to share. But that story will often have thematic connections to some of the concerns that the group might be carrying, and we'll use that story then to kind of start off leading the conversation. It might be a story about building relationships, or it might be a story about community or a supportive society, and we'll let the kind of ball start rolling with that. So it kind of starts the conversation off from a kind of different and unusual place. Sometimes that conversation is enough. Sometimes people have come to that meeting kind of with a lot that they wish to share, and we just kind of give them the space to speak and to listen. But also we have the option to kind of like move into a next stage, which is to actually use a story creating process to support people to share some of their thoughts and feelings. And that normally revolves around creation of a character. So if we're working with a group of carers, we might create a fictionalized character who shares some of their experiences, who we could imagine being a member of the group that we're sitting in. And that character gives people the space to kind of project onto him or her, some of their own experiences, which gives them the chance to regulate their own level of personal disclosure, but also find the space perhaps to share some things that they might find painful to kind of like to talk about if there was too much personal focus. So for example, in another area, we talked about family conflict. So I don't know if that was happening in the participants' lives, but by being able to talk about this character, we were able to really explore those issues in a really open and kind of supportive manner. The other approach that we might use then is also to kind of introduce an overnight bag that belongs to a person perhaps living with dementia. And in that bag, there'll be all sorts of thematic objects that we've picked up from the previous discussions that we've had. And we'll pass those around the participants and ask them to talk about those and what it might mean to this character who owns this bag. So that might include doctor's letters or a driver's license, which is now out of date, or a set of keys. We might ask who helped pack that bag. And that gives people the space, again, to just sort of talk about some of the things that they have been, that are important to them through the prism of this fictionalized storytelling process. We listen to all these conversations, and then we distill down what we hear into the priorities kind of afterwards, working along with the trust itself. And then obviously this is handed on to you at the conference. And this is the first time I've been able to attend the conference, so I'm really excited to see this next part of the process and how all we've discussed over the last couple of days is going to go forwards, and just to hear your discussions.
Thank you very much, Sam, for explaining to us the basis of the storytelling approach and how it works with local communities. As I mentioned earlier, these sessions have now been running in Edinburgh and the Lothians, and there have been sessions for people living with dementia, for unpaid carers of people with dementia, and also sessions for those who work closely with and support those individuals and families. After these sessions, as Sam actually did explain, all of these conversations and stories are distilled down into a set of local priorities. So the individual story becomes the collective story, and they are based on what people have told us. So I'm now going to hand over to Shona Cowie, who's going to tell us more about this and the priorities.
Hello everyone, thanks so much for the warm welcome, Brendan, and our Sam described what we do really beautifully there. So I'm from the village, and we have a space in Pollock. So in normal times we work from there in the south of Glasgow, serving the community, and we work across Glasgow and beyond Scotland sometimes. We, as you've already heard, we think that stories have a really crucial role to play in conversations we can have about our context and our experiences, and we can use stories to help people to potentially reframe narratives that they've been told or that they tell themselves. So we ran 4 sessions in this series of workshops. The first was with people who have a dementia diagnosis. So the second was with unpaid carers. The third was with paid staff and carers who work with people with a dementia diagnosis. And in those sessions, we used storytelling to create the space to have these robust conversations. And as Sam described, we created fictional characters onto which we can add our experiences. And interestingly, one of the characters would have liked forget-me-nots. He was a musician and he was really missing having that connection from his band. So I wish I'd known about that at the time. We created these characters together, and we thought a lot about care, and we thought about community and what that means. And from those sessions, we pulled out the priorities that we'll go on to talk about in a little moment. We also ran a 4th session, which was a trial for us. We ran an online training program for people who we thought might be able to use the techniques that we've adapted and developed at the village. We realised that as we're not working face-to-face as much anymore, the impact of the work we're doing at the village has changed, potentially minimised. And we thought that by sharing the learning and allowing other people to use these techniques and hopefully apply them to their contexts, their very varied contexts, we could amplify the impact of this work. And this was a really interesting and I think successful research project, and we'll carry it on and we'll see where that goes. if you'd told me a year ago that we'd have to do this online, that I'd have to adapt my whole practice, I wouldn't have believed you, and I might not have thought it was possible. I think, as with storytelling, I probably dug my heels in a little bit at the beginning of this year, saying, no, storytelling is, we say in the Scottish storytelling scene, eye to eye and heart to heart. It has to be face to face. It's a bit cheesy, but it's true. And I probably would have thought the same about care. And while there is no replacement for physical being together, for physical contact, actually some things have opened up. The potential has revealed itself. There are some silver linings. You can build connection across a screen. You can build a community, and sometimes the communities can broaden out when we work on online platforms. So I was really pleased that we were able to find a way to transfer the practice online for this time. One of the interesting things that's come out of this style of working on an online platform is that we recorded the sessions, and that meant that I could go back and watch myself for 8 hours and analyse my practice quite closely. But that means that nothing gets missed. We can capture the much more subtle comments that I might have forgotten after the rush of the workshop or not had time to write down in the moment. We can go back and we can see who was agreeing with what statement and how emphatically. So we get a really, really rich and broad understanding of how people are thinking and feeling in these times. So in the priorities, we've pulled out some of these key quotes. I just want to highlight a quote from the training session. So we haven't based the priorities on the training session because it was a slightly different, it was working towards a different goal. But I do think this quote really sums up what stories can do in contexts of dementia care. So this is a quote from one of the participants. I worked with one lady who had lost her false teeth. She came in the next day, full on tears, saying that 2 little animals had came in and they had stole her teeth away from her, and she was so upset and she felt like her home had been violated. The truth is that 2 little animals wouldn't have come in and stolen her teeth. But what had happened is that she'd misplaced her teeth, that she had new carers who weren't fixed, that she didn't really chat to them, that they were in and out of her home. And when you build that together, the theme of what she was feeling is true. She was so upset. She felt like her home had been violated. It didn't feel like her home anymore. She didn't have her teeth. She didn't feel herself. The theme and the emotion behind the story was so real, but the story itself wasn't. But it was so worthwhile her telling us that. You boil it down. Your home is not your own. You've misplaced your teeth. You have strangers in your space that didn't feel comfortable. That's what was important to her, even if the truth of what had happened and didn't happen that way. And I thought that completely summarised how story and truth can interplay in these contexts. And actually, maybe we need to reposition how we perceive truth and how we perceive story in these contexts and what we can learn from both. So in the sessions, when we pulled out the key priorities, I asked our participants to consider what care meant to them. And this is some of the things that we said. To be caring is wanting to see the goodness of a person or a community. Care is not only thinking about yourself, care is friendship. It is friendship. Care is listening and sharing. You can receive care from a person who you assumed should be the one who needs care. It's 2 ways. Caring is teamwork. Caring is verbal support. It's touch. It's interaction based on strength. It's a big word. Caring is a lifelong commitment, and it means different things to different people. It's part of everyone. Care is within you. It's a behaviour it can't be taught. It can be nurtured. It's who you are, a carer. Care is not necessarily rewarding. It can be demoralising. It can be physical. It's tiring. I'm exhausted. It can be lonely. Care can be painful. I want to make sure that you've written down that care can be emotionally painful. If I speak from what's in my heart right now, care is doom and gloom. Care is bravery. It's indiscriminate. Care is validation, it's respect, it's being valued, it's being accepted, it's laughing and smiling and joy. Care is demanding. Care is patience. Care is a privilege. Care is frustrating. Care is non-judgmental. Care is us, it's allies, it's advocacy. Care is a network. So that was taken from the three sessions, and I just thought it gave a really interesting overview about just our initial responses and what care means to the people who are doing it. So we're going to move on to the priorities now. And as I said, we've been able to pull out key quotes from the recorded sessions, which we might not have been able to do in previous contexts. So I'm not going to speak too much about them. I'm going to let the words speak for themselves. But I'm going to share my screen now, so please bear with me while I quietly panic inside and hope that you don't see something funny. Let's go. So the first priority is that we would like to see more emphasis on our rights as citizens, to be able to access information and services that recognise us as individuals and that better support and empower us. Somebody said, if you don't make a fuss or someone makes a fuss for you, they just forget about you, and I'm not one to make a fuss. The second priority, as we face increasing social isolation and people may be struggling with mental health, we need a variety of options available to us to remain connected with peers and those in our communities. If I really speak from what's in my heart right now, care means doom and gloom. Oh, now I have to figure out how to change the slide. There we go. The third priority, we need places and time to have conversations where we can share our experiences and have mutual support, understanding and guidance. Peer support is an important way to do this. Peer support is the only thing I have benefited from in a major way. It's where you feel you can be open. We want better access to personalised support and to be included in the decisions that affect us. And someone said, this session has confirmed what I think about society and what happens about the cared for. I felt like the man in the story, forgotten, without a voice. I've had to fight. There is a need for kindness, respect, friendship, and recognising the value of each person. These are not easily quantified, but should never be overlooked. Someone said, we are talking about humans here. And someone else said, the most important thing of all is patience and kindness. It doesn't have to be in your face doing things all the time for you, but being patient and kind is very important. Dementia is not just about the individual, it's about the community and its response. We want to see better recognition and emphasis of the key impact that local communities play in supporting people with dementia and unpaid carers now, and as we transition out of the pandemic. There has been some tremendous connections with people. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in Timbuktu or Preston Pans. It's as if you are all in the same room. I missed the face-to-face, but there are bonuses. And that was from a community worker. And I think that's a really brilliant place to finish this on. Well, of course, there's some really crucial and immediate responses that are needed and need all of our attention, particularly isolation and those feelings right now. The final session with the trainers, it felt really important, and the staff members, it felt like they really wanted a space to share the exciting innovations that have happened in the face of this challenge that we've all faced. It was a really positive space to end on, and some incredible work has happened, some very exciting and creative responses to such a challenging time. So although there were some real serious things we need to address, I was very happy that we ended somewhere looking forward. So thank you so much, and I'm going to pass back to Brendan now.
Thank you so much, Shona. That was amazing. If ever, I never do need to be convinced about the power of story. But actually, if anybody ever did need convincing, then there was an example of just how these stories are so powerful. I've been watching the chat as it's unfolded whilst you were talking, Shona, and it's just amazing to see how people are connecting with this work and the how it resonates with people so strongly. And great. I mean, I'm never going to leave some of the comments you made, and the eye to eye and heart to heart in terms of storytelling is such a powerful metaphor that I think we can use in whatever context we're in. And I know, like many other people, as you were talking, that that description of care and caring is something I am going to make sure that every student nurse I ever have contact with hears and connects with, because it is a magnificent way of describing care and caring in whatever form or place it happens. So thank you so much. That was just fabulous. And we will now be carrying on really with our focus on the priorities. So I'm going to invite the Q&A panel to join me through their cameras. So kicking off with Arlene.
I'm honoured, Brendan. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the conference today. It's so brilliant to see so many people engaged. My name's Arlene Crockett, and I'm the Director of Evidence and Influencing with the Dementia Programme at the Lothians Trust.
Great, thanks, Arlene. And Jim.
Morning, my name's Jim Brown. I'm a development worker with Carers of West Lothian. And have been working for almost 15 years, most of the time supporting carers of people with dementia. Great,
thanks, Jim. And Siobhan.
Hi, thanks for inviting me along today. My name's Siobhan Key. I work for NHS Lothian, and I'm the Alzheimer's Scotland Dementia Nurse Consultant. So I've got a remit where I work across the acute hospitals, but I'm also involved in the 4 health and social care partnerships as well.
Welcome. And Julia.
Hello, my name's Julia Mackenzie. I'm the post-diagnostic support lead for the East of Scotland. I support link workers in Edinburgh and the Lothians, and I was previously a link worker myself for over 7 years.
Great, welcome Julia. And Karen.
Hi there, thanks for inviting me along today. My name's Karen Tom. I'm in Strategic Planning Commissioning with Edinburgh Health and Social Care Partnership. Prior to that, a considerable practice experience as an occupational therapist.
Great, good to see you. And Jess?
Hi everybody, thank you so much for having me here today. It's fantastic, I've really enjoyed it so far. My name is Jess Wade and I'm the Chief Executive at Carers of East Lothian.
Richard, thanks Jess. And last but no means least is Jill.
Hi everyone, my name's Jill McGinty and I care for my mum at home and I attend the Carers of West Lothian.
Fantastic. Welcome to all of you and thank you for joining us on this panel this morning. We have got some questions that I'm going to field to you. What I'm going to do is maybe pick on somebody that I think could possibly kick off with answering that question. And then if other people want to come in, because we don't have a raise hands function that's easy to use on this system, if you could just wave at me or shout at me or do something, I'll notice you, and then we can go from there if that's all right. So I'm going to kick off the first question, and I'm going to direct it at Arlene actually. And don't be too scared, it's okay. What the question focuses on the priorities, and it asks what is needed to realise these priorities and the rights they express.
Thank you, Brendan. No pressure to kick this off. I think, Shona's, description of the approach and care as you've described was so beautifully put, and I think central to what we have done both for these sessions and previous sessions is give people the platform to share what matters to them. And I think what we need to see is that we honour what has been said and we honour these priorities. And I think to realise them, I think true to this and meaningful to this as well as that how we've got to coming together for these priorities. We've got to this point because we've collaborated, we've came together, we've got partnership. We've basically threw aside some of those preconceived ideas and we've provided an open space for that conversation. And I think to realise the priorities going forward and the rights of those people who have been engaged, we need to continue with that momentum and that approach, and we need to come together and we need to look at ways both that we've carried out already and new ways to realise what this looks like, and continue to include people with dementia, unpaid carers, and those who work with them to realise those priorities. So I'd be interested to hear from those that are delivering the support in those local communities about what that means for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anyone who'd like to pick up on that from Arlene? Yeah, Jess.
Thank you. I mean, agree completely, Arlene, with everything that you've said there. I had a bit of a think about this question earlier on as well. And I think looking at the priorities, even through them, there's that theme of kind of humanity, about individuals, people, you know, and the value of care. So I think for me, you know, it's recognised in Scotland, there's been a huge amount of work done already to try and address some of these things around kind of personalisation, self-directed support, trying to put people at the centre of decision making and involving them. And it's been really hard work, and I don't think we've cracked it. I think that's, you know, I think that's fair to say. And there's a lot of work being done, you know, even just now with the independent review of social care happening. You know, there's ongoing conversations about how do we do this better. But I think for me, the things that stand out are it's involving people at every single level. So, you know, having people that use services, having carers, having the people that this work really matters to and impacts on, involved at every single level where we can, whether that's in community organisations, on the IGB, you know, at every level of the infrastructure, making those decisions. Collaboration, exactly like you said, Arlene. And I think, you know, from my perspective in the voluntary sector, I think we are getting better all the time at working with other people together, and just we need to do more of that. But I think the big thing underlying all of that, and it is that theme that jumps out to me through all of those priorities, is it's about valuing people and it's about valuing care, unpaid care and paid care, and just seeing the humanity in all of that. And I think that some of the quotes earlier really captured that so nicely.
Yeah, absolutely. Karen.
Hi. Yes, I mean, I think that this is something that I think is a real challenge, is getting to the people and hearing the voices of people who are maybe not so easy to reach, you know, who are maybe in the midst of caring, or who are at, you know, a moderate or advanced stage in dementia. And how do you capture their stories, their experiences, to make sure that actually what's been developed in terms of the services that are out there are designed around what people need and not what services want. And I think that that's a huge challenge. And I think that COVID has thrown us into an even bigger challenge at the moment, where face-to-face is probably the most powerful way of doing that. And we've got so many people digitally excluded at the moment generally, and particularly older people and people with a dementia diagnosis, even more so possibly. And that's some of the themes that we've been hearing recently within the partnership. It's how we actually manage to engage so that people feel listened to, and that that we are, you know, we are able to listen. And I think that that's a real challenge, because I think engagement and talking to people is at the heart of what we have to do.
Mm-hmm. I suppose, yeah, Julia.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us in Alzheimer's Scotland, all of the priorities, I think, are reflected in the work that we strive to do in terms of giving the people with dementia and their supporters a voice. But also, just I think in Scotland we've made a great start in terms of the support that's provided with dementia, in terms of the post-diagnostic support offer that's open to everyone with a diagnosis of dementia. And certainly for the Alzheimer's Scotland link workers, I would expect Alzheimer's Scotland link workers to cover all of the kind of areas that have been identified in the priorities as part of the year support that they provide. You know, really listening to people and working around what really matters to them and providing that support around that. You know, a person-centered approach around caring and thinking about the future, and that planning for the future as well, I think is really important. I think one of the issues is that the PDS isn't available to everybody. You know, we've made a good start, but there's probably not enough link workers around, and you know, we're well served in some areas, but other areas, you know, people are waiting a long time for support, and that has an impact on the effectiveness of that support when they receive it, if they've been waiting for a long time to receive it. So there's still a lot of issues around, but I think we've made a good start in Scotland compared to other areas, I think.
Okay, now Karen, you wanted to come in, but actually maybe...
I think Siobhan was first, yeah.
Well, did I miss you? Sorry, Siobhan, I missed you. I was reading the question. Go for it.
Yeah, I was just kind of a wee bit take on what Julia was saying. There is actually, PDS has come a really long way and it's accessing a lot of people, but there's also what I think as healthcare professionals that we all need to be mindful of is actually there's a big population of people out there who aren't getting access to services. And what we need to be doing is, although we all strive to deliver person-centred care, and I can really see that that personalised care is what's coming out of the priorities, is that we're trying to fit personalised care into a really rigid system of support. And until there's real changes with that, it's really going to be difficult for us to say that we're truly delivering that person-centred care.
Okay, I know Karen, you want to come back in, but I maybe could catch, and maybe you could capture it through the next question, because there's a couple of questions in the Q&A and also one that was submitted in advance that I think maybe are around this whole issue of we have these priorities and actually, as everybody said, they are core to humanity and we may use the phrase person-centered care, but it's much more than that. It's about fundamental human beings and people as persons, really. And there's a couple of questions that relate to this issue of the fact that there are still a large number of people with dementia and their carers who are not identified as needing the support or are labelled as the hard to reach group, which is not a label I particularly like, but I know it's a reality. And so there's a couple of questions that are around this issue about how do we try and get to support these people, to actually do something more comprehensive to try and offer this kind of support that people are identifying in the chat and in the Q&A. So I wondered, Karen, did you want to kick that off? Maybe it might pick up on what you were wanting to come in on anyway.
Yeah, I think that some of what I feel is around, it's about how you can actually empower people and how you can connect them in. I think that, as Siobhan's touched on this earlier, we're dealing with some very complex systems that can be complex for professionals to navigate around. But if you're suddenly diagnosed and you know, and your family are suddenly trying to work their way through that system, can be hugely complex. I think that's a huge challenge. And I think it's about how we can actually make that simpler. And I think part of that is about, you know, the feedback that we get from the people using the services in that way. What I would say is that I think that in terms of the empowerment, I think that there is something that and an option that is open now to people is around the self-directed support options. People aren't picking up on those enough at the moment. Everybody has got a right to request if they are assessed as needing care. Then it's about, you know, they then can ask to, you know, look at the self-directed support options, which might mean that they can then create support that is more around their needs rather than fitting into the services that are there. And depending on the option that you take, you can actually get support to do that. It's not always just a case of getting that money and then, you know, you've got to deal with it. But I think there is also that bit about as something incumbent about us all as people, whether we're working or whether we're out in the community, I think about the ongoing education of the staff and the public. And that comes back to the language that we use. It comes back to, you know, I mean, people living with dementia rather than the common phrase of suffering from dementia. And it's about us being able to challenge that at every turn. And it's also about, you know, that community response as well, which I think is hugely important.
Yep, great. And Arlene?
Thanks, Karen, and probably that's good for me to come in. I think PDS is available, and Julie, you're right, you know, there's not everyone that's accessing that, and Siobhan, you're absolutely right in relation to the demographic and the population that we're dealing with. But I think what COVID-19 has shone a significant light on is that community response. And actually, I think there is a real opportunity that COVID-19 brings us, despite it being, you know, awful and leaving people in great despair, is that we can take a fresh look at some of that work, take a fresh look at post-diagnostic support and look at the traditional delivery methods and think about it differently, because there is communities out there day in, day out, even before COVID-19, who have been delivering post-diagnostic support in a number of different ways and giving people with dementia and unpaid carers the options that they need. Then the transferability of the learning from that, then going on to things like you say in terms of SDS, Karen, you know, what we need to have is better flexibility around people's use for that, and giving them the options and that power and control to you know, to design the care that they need at the time that they want, and with people that they trust and have a relationship with. And I think we really would be missing a trick now, given that we are having an event like this, you know, in the midst of a pandemic, with all of this learning, not to be starting to challenge and look at some of the existing, you know, framework and delivery methods in a different way.
Yeah. I wonder if Jim or Jill, I think Jim, you want to come in, if you had a comment on this.
Yeah, specifically on the SDS, as Arlene was saying, I think it's also how it's explained to that extent. Carers of West Lothian have sort of recorded short, punchy little question and answer sessions with social work managers, just to get an explanation of each choice, option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4, and what it actually means for that person. And I think it actually helps that it comes from almost like a trusted source from ourselves, and it's not just a straight instruction from a social worker that they haven't really begun to relate to yet. But I have to agree about the post-diagnostic support. The post-diagnostic team in West Lothian have been excellent, and we get very early interaction with the carers, almost as soon as the post-diagnostic workers are allocated, and I think that makes a great help as far as we're concerned about trying to do things preventatively, and give people as much knowledge as they can as soon as they can, even though maybe at that first diagnosis time they don't really know what's going to be coming. But you know, to have that support straight away is an important thing, and that relies on fellow professionals referring to ourselves. We have 6,000 carers in our database. There are 20,000 carers in West Lothian, so there's a huge bunch who don't know about us, and don't know about the support that's available. So it's important to all professionals to refer to organisations like ourselves as well.
So could I just ask, Jim, you know, that statistic, you know, 6,000 versus the 20,000, what strategies are you using to try and get to that other 14,000 that might be helpful to others to learn from?
We do have our Facebook pages. We do all the different platforms for trying to advertise our service, but the reality is we should probably receive more referrals from other professional organisations who meet the family first, but don't always think about referring to ourselves. I think that's a huge gap. I've always thought that we should get most of our referrals as an organisation from the NHS, the social work department, and the GPs. And unfortunately, that doesn't always follow. There's a limit to what we can do in a small budget. But the strength of our organisations, all the third sector organisations, is we're not number driven. So we're outcome driven, so we can do more person-centred work with that carer and that family.
Yeah, it's a critical point, isn't it, about that referral pathway, really, which is fairly, hugely important. Jill, I think you wanted to come in as well.
Yes, I'm glad that since my mum was diagnosed back in late 2017, things definitely have improved, because at that time I remember my experience at the memory clinic when mum was diagnosed. It's kept silly, really. It shouldn't have come as a shock, because I kind of knew what was coming, but it still does come as a shock when you get that actual diagnosis and you're kind of handed a bunch of leaflets, which at that point in time you maybe not taking things in properly. We had the years post-diagnostic support, which I have to be honest, as a carer, I think I would have preferred to have been given the option as to when I wanted that year's post-diagnostic support to kick in, because at the beginning of the journey, Mum was still very much independent and able to do lots of things. And it's only now, sort of 3-4 years down the line, that I sometimes think I wish I had that now.
Yeah.
Now I was able to find that by myself, because I just by chance came across the Carers of West Lothian through their Facebook page. Otherwise I wouldn't have known that they existed, and that has been an absolute godsend for me, and that was how I found them. But I was not pointed in their direction or referred to anybody. Quite rightly, at diagnosis, everything is all about the person that has the diagnosis, but I think more needs to be taken into account that the family and the carers need support as the condition progresses as well.
Absolutely. So that probably connects with some comments and questions that have been coming up in the chat and Q&A, which is around the need for a variety of approaches to connect with people in terms of communication, information, seeking out, getting access, all of those kind of things. And also the issue of autonomy and choice, of persons with dementia themselves, that actually some people might just dig their heels in and not want to do any of it. And I'm just wondering how, and that of course has a knock-on effect on the person who's the carer within that situation. So I'm just wondering if any of you have any comment you want to make on that, because I think it connects with what you've just said as well, Jill, about where do we sit really within those dilemmas. So Jess?
Thank you. Yeah, just on the point about kind of how can you access support as a carer, and how can we support carers if the person you're caring for doesn't seem to want to sort of cooperate with support in the way that you're imagining it. What I would say, certainly from our perspective as an organisation, from Carers of East Lothian, we strongly believe it's important that there is support there for carers, and there is support there for individuals, whether affected by dementia or other conditions, because sometimes there will be conflict, sometimes there will be disagreement, and that's life, So for us as an organisation, we're here to support carers. So I would say for anybody in that position, get in touch with your local carer centre, and certainly all the carer centres I'm aware of are working in, a sort of one-to-one holistic approach in terms of support. And there's workers there who will have supported other people in similar kinds of difficulties, and will be able to just help you think through solutions, which may not be obvious, but it might not be what you're thinking of. So it might not be, how do I persuade the person I'm helping to do this or this? It might just be, well, okay, if I can't control that, what can I control? How can I get the support that I need? What boundaries do I need? And focusing very much on the carer and the support they need. So just to really reassure that, carers do have their own needs, and that's okay. And that's exactly what we're here for. Great.
Thanks, Jess. Arlene and then Siobhan, I think.
Yeah, it might be good just to share an example that we're aware of and learning that's really interesting, actually, and goes back to your question, Jill, around that engagement and connection for people. In Orkney, we've been doing a lot of work up there recently, and what they have now secured is funding for the first post-diagnostic support worker that actually is based within the community, and is being supported and funded by Age Scotland Orkney. So they're based within the community hub, the middle of the high street. People are ordinarily coming in and out of there anyway for support, for chiropody, for, support with carers, for activity, for community. So the engagement's already there, and then what they can do very seamlessly then is be engaged in post-diagnostic support. And I think that's a crucial step forward in terms of that kind of multi-layered delivery of the support. And I think, Jill, for people, like yourselves going forward in the future, I think it's about that connection, in the community, and who's best placed to do that, and the time and the pace then that's delivered. And I think the Age Scotland Orkney example, it's a big leap. It's never been done before, but what they're also doing is providing the diagnostic process within the hub as well. So people will then go to the hub and be diagnosed within the hub, and then be introduced to their post-diagnostic worker when it's the right time to do that, and when they're ready to take that forward. So it's that kind of, I suppose, taking the formality out of it and making it much more of a natural relationship, and building on that as things move forward.
Great, thanks, Arlene. And Siobhan?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to add to what Jess was saying is that actually what we need to be doing is, I suppose, empowering people to know how to access support. However, I think what we need to try and do is educate people and make them aware of that before they're at that crisis point, because I think what we find is that people will only ask for help when they're actually on their knees and really, really struggling. And I think what we're maybe not so good at doing, but getting better, is just actually helping people understand what services are available. And it might not be that they need those services at that time, but it's so that they're getting sort of timely access to that services, but not at a point of crisis, because quite often when we're at that crisis point, we're much more limited in what we can do.
There's so much I'd want to say about professionals and discharge planning here, but I will keep my mouth firmly shut at this point in time. Jim, last comment on this one, and then I'm gonna have one final round before we close for a break. Yeah. So, Jim.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it isn't all the discharge planning and the fellow professionals. As Joe will readily admit, Joe was a carer who came to realise her caring role later on and wanted to preserve that mother-daughter relationship for as long as she possibly could. So I think it's quite understandable. In some cases, people don't identify themselves as carers until it does get a more difficult role. Whereas we would like to get a hold of people early doors and help prepare them. It's not always possible, because the discrepancy between the 6,000 and 20,000 isn't always down to a lack of cooperation from other organisations. It's sometimes carers not wanting to be carers and wanting to be mother, daughter, son, brother. So that has a big part to play in it as well.
Absolutely. It's a really important point, actually, not just to assume the caring role is there, which is so critical. So I'm just conscious we've got a couple of minutes left. And what I'm going to do, because there's a question that really connects with what Arlene said in terms of that example, is given the priorities you've heard about this morning, and we will have more time to discuss them in the second round of Q&A later. But I just wondered, for those of you who haven't offered an example, so Arlene, you're out of this one, is if you were to identify, an example, thinking about those priorities, and an example that you know of that really resonates with you, that actually would bring a priority alive. Have you got one that you'd be willing to share with everybody else? So I'll go around and pick on you on the basis of how I can see you in these windows that I've got in front of me. So that would mean starting with Julia.
Me, sorry. Yeah, I'll pick on the importance of peer support. And I think we have good examples within the PDS service that I've worked in both West Lothian and in Mid Lothian, of providing post-diagnostic support groups for people at a very early stage and after their diagnosis, which brings both the person with dementia and their family member or friend, whoever is supporting them, to come along to that group as well. And we always had an information session, then split into two groups, so that peer support began there. And the feedback from the groups has always been, right from the very beginning, despite the fact that there's lots of information provided in those groups, that the peer support was the thing that was most beneficial to people. And then the peer support often continued beyond those groups, because friendships had been made and connections had been made, and people were much more then open to trying other community support out in the community as well. So so peer support is a key part of the PDS that we try to deliver within in the role of the link worker as well. And that's been quite difficult over the past period of time, but we've been working on ways of doing that online.
Great, thanks, Julia. Great example. Karen?
I think in terms of the priorities, what I would say is that the first tangible offer, and it might not be for everybody, but it's I think really important opportunity, is that the Edinburgh Integration Joint Board are looking for citizen and carer reps, and that there is an actual call out for that at the moment. And I think that that's a real opportunity to actually get right to the heart of decision making in terms of being involved in that. So we can actually get the link up on the chat, and Arlene has agreed that that can go out with the information. But that's live at the moment, and you know, and that can be for someone who's got a dementia diagnosis or carer, and you know, so I think that that's the first thing. And I think that secondly, just generally around some of the work that we're doing, and I know that this is maybe a later question, but I think that this is not just about saying what's happening in Edinburgh just now, but this is about using this learning for some of the work that is currently ongoing and about to start off, most notably older people's mental health pathways work. So this is absolutely crucial to some of that, and I'll help to add to what we know already and what we still need to know.
Great. Thank you very much, Karen. I'm conscious we've now hit our deadline for question, but if you could hang on to that question about the example, and we'll come back to it again in the second round of Q&A. So don't feel your chance is gone. We'll have another round at it. I just want to end with a comment. Arlene did post on the chat that the Life Changes Trust is hosting a learning event on the 15th of December, focusing on the individual awards, where there will be lots of valuable learning in relation to SDS delivery. So I think it's really important to note that if you can get along to that too, because that's a further learning event. So another opportunity. So thank you all. Thank you to the panel for engaging in the Q&A and for the rich answers that you've given. So that's really helpful, and welcome you back again in a short while. Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the second half of our event. And I hope you managed to have a good break and that you managed to refresh yourselves and step away from the screen. Since we've all become home workers, I've been intrigued by some of the excuses people have why they might be late for a meeting these days, including putting the washing out and all kinds of other domestic things that we never experienced when we were more campus-based or office-based. So I'm sure you might have engaged in some of that as well to take your mind away from the computer. So thank you all for coming back, and looking forward to the second half of this event. Our next section will really focus on local projects and take a look at how they have traditionally been supporting people living with dementia and their unpaid carers here in Edinburgh and in the Lothians. But more specifically, I guess, looking at how they have managed to adjust and adapt to the COVID pandemic period that we're all living through. And it's my pleasure to introduce two people whose work I know very well, and that is Dr. Sue Northrop, who's the founding director of Dementia Friendly East Lothian, and Dawn Irvin, who's the learning and participation coordinator for the Dementia Friendly Arts Programme at Capitol Theatres. I'm delighted that both of them are part of this event today. Sue and Dawn started working together last year and found that their partnership working can deliver incredible results, which I guess all partnership working in the end does. They have worked in collaboration to exchange ideas and to adapt some of their existing creative projects to an online platform, from sofa to seat. A supportive programme to give families living with dementia access to theatre productions, the hugely popular afternoon teas. Now, I always thought I was a dab hand at coming up with snappy titles, but I think this title has got to be the best ever for a presentation. The presentation is called Online Performance and Real World Cake, bringing worlds together to create a toe-tapping, lip-smacking experience in the community during the COVID pandemic.
So I kind of think that we've kind of had similar ways of responding to COVID. You know, the way that Capitol Theatres responded with their creative projects, and in a similar way to how you have as well out in East Lothian. It kind of feels like we both took the programmes that were already successfully running for us in our areas and just lightly adapted them so that we could take them into an online format.
Yeah, I mean, it was great because that's when COVID came, and we got people from here who were really struggling with dementia and carers over to the Festival Theatre right from the early stages and giving people this amazing experience. People were then going on buses, they were confident, they'd got stories to tell, and then it was gone. But because you and I just kind of chat about things and we're kind of, let's find an easy way to make this happen, We did.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? You can't underestimate the power of just phoning your sort of other organisations and peers up and sort of having a good chat about what each are doing in their area or what their ideas may be. And that's always the way that something special comes out of it, isn't it? Rather than really trying to think through a project idea at first. Or certainly that's been the way it's been successful for us, I think, is just getting together and sort of throwing around a few ideas and seeing where it leads us. And I suppose you're right, that is exactly what happened with Sofa to Seat, because I got in touch with you a way back when last year before Christmas time. And that was when we started to build this really great relationship. And it was brilliant for us at Capitol Theatres to have so many families from East Lothian who were coming in. We were able to offer them buses and transport and bring them into the theatre and let them really, it wasn't just come to the theatre and see a show, it really was an experience. It was a day out that included tea, and it included a tour by maybe Scottish Ballet or Scottish Opera. They would come and do a sensory tour for them. So it started to really grow into something quite special between us, and it felt really sad for us to have suddenly been thrown into COVID and the potential that those relationships were lost. So I'm so glad that we were able to quickly adapt what we were doing.
Yeah, we need to capture that story, because I remember, you'll know who I mean, and we can't kind of mention names. There are friends that we have who aren't with us anymore, and we miss them. We miss them, but we remember some of the special times we gave them, like writing a review. I mean, writing a review of a performance. That people will probably never be able to do that again.
That's right.
Won't do that again. But that was, I hadn't expected people to get a published review of what they thought, and they were chuffed. I mean, it was just wonderful to see.
Yeah, it absolutely did so much for that person's confidence as well, didn't it? And the fact that they were able to share a little bit of who they were, in their life, and the fact that they had performed on one of our stages as well, certainly one of the people that I'm thinking of. And you could just see how much that made a difference for him to be acknowledged in that way. Yeah, it's really special.
Absolutely. Of course, because we kind of bring the local and the national together, I would see these stories being told in the community to people's friends. I would see how people were when they came back. So I kind of saw what happened afterwards and how that was lovely, and to be able to offer people a free treat. And I have to say, you did so much of the legwork as well. That was so appreciated. The organising, we got the taxis sorted. Good business, good for local business. Actually, I was really.
Yeah, it was very good.
Because that's one of our things is, we promote local businesses as much as whatever. So they now had a local taxi firm to use.
That's right, and I think as well that my learning from what we did there initially in that pilot is that I would always go to a local firm now in terms of the transport. And I think more than anything, it was even down to the fact that whenever I brought somebody's name up who'd maybe made a booking with us, when I phoned the taxi firm or the bus company, they often knew those people already. And so there was already this really great sense of, we know who these people are, we know where they live, we know what, how we want to be with them when they come on the transport. And it just all round made for a really successful experience for these families, because they felt that somebody was really taking care of them from their sofa to the seat of the theatre. So,
and another relationship in the community, another contact, another resource, another human being, another sense of connection. And so, I mean, COVID just blew so much of that away in every way imaginable. So when we got in touch, I was up to my oxters doing hyper local work, keeping people prescriptions and fed and informed and all the rest of it. And I thought, oh God, that's just what people need. And Zoom, it just worked so well, didn't it? I mean, we just took what we'd done, tweaked it. I mean, you did all the work. All I did was just, I can't remember what I did. Just go, going, yay! But it just kind of segged into, and then the opening came for something to do more. So having got our local most vulnerable people as safe as we could, when the option came, we were running a digital inclusion project.
That's right.
So when that local care home got in touch for wanting some digital support, we gave them a copy. We did them a copy of what's on, and it had right on the top there was the Festival Theatres work, and they saw that and they went, oh, wow.
Yeah.
God, I thought I'm stuck in this care home, not able to see my family, but I can go to the Festival Theatre in Edinburgh on Zoom.
Yeah,
And
I
then
know.
we just made it happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it was so important right from the beginning that we could take an essence of what, you know, the events that we produced here in the venues. So I started off by thinking, right, what do we do with our tea parties and how can we make that work in the formats that are digital formats that are now available to us? And obviously, Zoom was going to present a problem in terms of performance because it's just too difficult to maybe get more than one person singing or performing in sync with another in a time. So, and my obviously next channel was to go straight to pre-recorded material. And so I was so lucky that we had so many relationships with local bands and even our in-house. We have so many talented people that are in Capitol Theatres. We have our own Capitol Theatres house band. And so we were quickly able to create these pre-recorded pieces of material. And then the next stage for me was to think, right, well, how can we do this safely? We want people to still have the tea party experience. And I think that's an important thing for me, is that creating that experience element, and that it's not just a singular event, and that there's something extra special that goes into the creation of it. And so that was when I started to investigate local caterers. And there was a few caterers in Edinburgh who'd really sort of nailed down this idea of contact-free deliveries. So they were using all the COVID guidelines and creating their afternoon tea packages in little boxes, following the guidelines and being able to just specifically drop them at somebody's doorstep. And that was fine. And we knew what time they were going to be delivered. I think the difficult thing from our perspective, in terms of you being in East Lothian and us being in the centre of Edinburgh, was just that the unfortunate thing that one, funding was difficult in terms of allowing us to stretch out to the further East Lothian postcodes, and that the caterers themselves just couldn't quite manage that wide a spread of deliveries. Yeah. But that was brilliant because, yet again, talking directly with you, Sue, we found a solution.
And we found a better solution. We found a much better solution, again, supporting local economy, supporting local groups and relationships. I mean, I've got, there's a wonderful project in North Berwick called The Beacon, which was will be again a lunch club meeting every week for 40 years. I'm on the soup rota. I do the 5th Thursday of the month. My mum used to go to this and she loved it. And the cakes, you could just imagine, you know, the community makes much better cakes.
Absolutely. And yeah, absolutely.
So we got the digital, the digital inclusion project, and they weren't getting the tea, and we both thought that's not fair. You know, that's part of the experience, is a treat. And you know, the care home could have made it. That wasn't the point. The staff needed this treat and something special as much as everybody else.
Absolutely.
So we put the word out. I thought of the ladies, they are all ladies from the Beacon, sitting doing nothing. Some of these women just bake for charity almost all the time. They're an incredible force for good in our community. They're part of St Andrew Blackadder Church. So got volunteers really quickly, and that was the cakes. And then the Rotary said they'd take them because a lot of the ladies are shielding or, you know, looking or are carers themselves.
Yeah.
And that was it. And then we just got some photos. The Courier, our local newspaper, loved the story. The staff felt as good as the residents.
Yeah, that's definitely the feedback that I'm getting from this end as well. So right across the board, the care homes who are getting in touch with us, and even when I see them, you know, online on Zoom sessions, the staff are just, it's giving them some energy. You know, they're able to really get up and dance, and I've watched people dance and sing together, and you can see the staff are enjoying it just as much as any of the residents. And it's not surprising in the current climate, is it?
No, and it's quite, I mean, you can imagine now, discussions are underway about Christmas and virtual Christmas light ceremonies and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And so the Beacon can't be a lunch club at the moment, obviously, for obvious reasons, but going, oh, we might do something. Oh, we'll do something with the care home. And so that relationship is now there.
Yes, absolutely.
It's only been built, bits of it, by taking people an iPad.
Yeah.
The Rotary guys and the Beacon haven't met the residents.
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
but the relationship is there and it will continue. So we're all looking at how do we keep that going? How do we grow it? How do we support it? And when we get back to the real world, which at some point hopefully we will, where will things go?
Yeah, and the thing is as well, when you look at what we've been able to do with having people donate their skills in baking, and then they can take them out to the care homes. What's really great is that actually from a sustainability point of view, and even when things return to whatever normal is going to be, as a theatre, even though we have a tea party that will hopefully be back in the venue, there is still scope that we can also offer that out in the community where people maybe can't come into the centre of Edinburgh for whatever reason that may be. And that's all because there is that potential now that we can work with local bakers or local people who volunteer in their community in that way to keep that going. And my hope for the future is that we can do direct live streams. So we can live. There we go. Let's talk ideas. But my hope is that now, whilst we are in the venue, maybe having a tea party with people who are potentially more local to Edinburgh, that we'll be able to live stream and potentially be able to offer afternoon teas in the community, just as a regular event now. It's really special. And the interesting thing for me that I need to just mention is that from that relationship with Dementia Friendly East Lothian, and the fact that we were able to work through a way to make that happen with the Beacon Club and the Astley House Care Home, what that then encouraged me to do was to approach West Lothian. And so I approached West Lothian Resource Centre, and it was Sherry out at the Alzheimer's Scotland Centre out there. And this month, we're doing a very similar thing. So they heard how successful it was in East Lothian. And now what's happening this month is that we are teaming up with the Braid House is out in West Lothian, and they're going to offer the afternoon teas. They're going to make them, and people that are working within Alzheimer's Scotland are then going to deliver out to their local area in West Lothian. So it's just great. We're connecting from a theatre point of view. We are connecting with people who maybe don't have that same accessibility to come into us. Not that anyone can currently, but that maybe haven't stepped into the theatre because it's just too far out of their scope in terms of mobility or transport. So it's wonderful. It's really wonderful.
It is kind of interesting, and just talking together, sharing our stories, it just fits so well. And this for me is what it's about.
Yeah. And also, the great thing is the care homes themselves, because they're already making afternoon teas, they are taking on within their own locality. Certainly in Edinburgh, we've got a care home, in Edinburgh, who they're creating an extra 10 now every time they join our contact-free tea party, and then they're taking them out into their own EH13 postcode and delivering an extra 10 for free in their community because we're providing like the pre-recorded performance for them. So the thought that care homes, we could all work collaboratively like that, and that I can maybe work with other care homes in the area to also offer a few extras because they're making them anyway, is also something that's really exciting to explore.
Absolutely. I'm so excited about where we've got to with this, and where it goes next.
Yeah, and how we can potentially take that and lift it and make that work for many other things, many other activities that we do, and a new way to be able to just work with the community.
Wow, I think toe tapping, lip smacking really sums that up in every way. So huge thanks to Sue and Dawn for sharing that experience and a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I've just been looking at some of the chats and have seen it described as some of the highest quality nattering. So that has to be an accolade to you, Sue and Dawn. I was just thinking as that went on that surely cake has to be a cure for COVID, and I'm really surprised that Donald Trump hasn't announced it by now, that we could all be cured of COVID with cake, but certainly quite convinced of it from that presentation. So amazing work and a real example of what genuine partnership can deliver in communities and how that then spreads across communities. Just a wonderful, wonderful example. So thank you so much. We're now moving on to another example of a really strong project embedded in local communities, and that's the work of the Eric Liddell Centre in Edinburgh. The Eric Liddell Centre in Edinburgh is well-known charity and community hub that works with the local community to try and change perceptions of persons living with dementia and people with disabilities and also with mental health issues. And they deliver a whole wide array of services that we will hear more about in a minute. So the aim of the Eric Liddell Centre is to improve social connections and reduce social isolation and loneliness in our communities, something that has never been more important than currently. We're going to be hearing now from Martha Pollard, who is their Dementia Support and Befriending Coordinator, and who has been working very hard with her colleagues to develop adaptations and innovations to allow them to continue to work with and support people with dementia and carers in light of COVID-19 and the impact it has had. So over to Martha.
Hello, everyone. My name is Martha Pollard, and I work with the Eric Liddell Centre in Edinburgh as their Dementia Support and Befriending Coordinator. And I'm delighted to be here with my headset on to be able to share with you the adaptations and innovations that we've been involved in working with people living with dementia and carers in light of COVID-19 and its impact. In order to do this, I'm going to show you some slides and talk you through that. I need to get the slides up on screen, which I will do just now. This will take just a wee minute. What you see here is this quote from a carer, which we gathered during recent feedback about our programs. And the carer says, "Words have not been invented yet to describe the warmth of them doing what they can to make everyone contented." The Eric Liddell Centre is a care charity and community hub with its 40th anniversary of its founding this year. Our mission is to be at the heart of the community, enhancing health and well-being and improving people's lives. We aim to improve social connections and reduce social isolation and loneliness in our communities. We have a range of community programs, including daycare for people living with dementia, befriending, carer support, and friendship groups for people living with dementia and their supporters to attend together. And the image that you see here, just at the bottom right of the screen, is of one of the activities from the friendship groups, which was about our hands and what we have done with our hands during our lifetime and what our hands have held. Here's a little snapshot of programs with people living with dementia and carers that was happening within the centre pre-COVID times. Dementia Daycare, Monday to Friday, providing care inspectorate regulated, registered provision of support, activities and social engagement. 2 weekly friendship groups with people living with dementia and supporters to attend together. This includes lunch and an activity program. one-to-one befriending of carers by volunteers, and our carer support programme, including a wide range of classes that happened in the centre, events and trips, as well as one-to-one support. Over the set of the next few slides, I'm going to tell you a bit about the adaptations, innovations and creations in response to the impact of COVID-19 on the programmes that we've had in the centre and what we've done in response. So this first one is about dementia daycare. So dementia daycare immediately were able to transfer what they had been doing in person into a way to provide support to people in their own homes and at a distance with these restrictions that were in place. There's weekly well-being telephone calls to carers and daily well-being calls to clients. Signposting of all carers to the ELC lunch delivery programme, which was designed for the COVID times where people were receiving delivered lunches at home. Medication prompt and prescription pickup and drop-off locally where required. Laundry service where required. And visual prompts of staff sent by post to support their telephone calls so that a name could be connected to a face when someone is ringing. A shopping service for essential items and activity packages provided to all clients, dropped off at the door to maintain social distancing. And then as lockdown continued, Zoom activity sessions began to be provided, and the image that you see here on this slide is of one of those, a quiz session. Who or what is a BOSI? So I'm wondering what's in your mind about that as you are watching this presentation. In our carer support programme, the support that would have been provided in the centre was transferred to regular wellbeing telephone calls to the carers, and also a really wide range of free online classes offered to carers through Zoom. For example, yoga, Tai Chi and Qigong, art classes, mindfulness courses, and Indian dance. There was technical support and equipment, tablets, offered to those carers who required help in connecting to services and classes. Also signposting to the ELC lunch delivery programme and regular care and health-related information via email. The image that you see here in the corner is of a video exercise called Touch the Breath. It was part of the wellbeing programme and is on the ELC's YouTube channel. This is with peer-to-peer mindfulness, who also provided mindfulness classes via Zoom for carers. There's a few of the words of feedback. I thoroughly enjoyed the mindfulness course. I have to say, I feel really quite emotional now that it is over. It was so nice to see the same faces every week. I really benefited from the teachings and would absolutely love it if he was able to do more. Thanks very much indeed, not just for arranging for us to get this tablet computer and for the phone call and for the email giving us the links to the exercise groups we belong to, but also for all the lovely food you have arranged to be delivered to us. We really appreciate it, and the very hard work of the catering team that prepares it and the volunteers that deliver it. I must say how wonderful these art lessons have been. They are so varied and so well explained that it's a joy to try the pictures out. Thank you so much for this. In our befriending programme for carers, there have also been adaptations needed, whereby regular wellbeing telephone calls and emails now take place to both befrienders and befriendees to support them both through this time, as well as the befriender support being transferred to telephone support, so that weekly meetings which would have been held in person before lockdown would then transferred to telephone support during times of restriction. Also signposting of the befriendees to the ELC lunch delivery programme. Emails sent to befriendees with information around wellbeing activities and care and health related information. training and email support for befrienders for the shift to telephone befriending, and also matching and monitoring of new befriendees to the service, because some new matches have been made during lockdown times. So there are people being befriended over the telephone who've never met in face-to-face. And as time went on here too, began to have Zoom gatherings, and the one that you see in the corner here was one of the carers' afternoon teas, where we had a little bit of art input from Lisa, who's one of our members of staff, who is also an artist. Here are a few words of feedback about the carer support programme. Thank you for calling. It's so good to be able to keep connected. It's so good to know that you're there. Sometimes I really need that space to talk. Thank you. I'm so grateful to be in touch with you and the ELC. You put me in a good mood. I always feel better after I speak with you. I really appreciate all the ELC does. I miss it so badly. We'll get together sometime, but phoning really helps. In bereavement, I was given a choice of having a befriender, someone out with my normal friendship, to meet and chat objectively of life and so on. I accepted, and now have acquired another friend for life. Just realizing before I read out the feedback there, I'd said this was feedback to the carer support program, which it is, but it's specifically related to befriending part of our carer support. And with our friendship groups, we have made some adaptations and innovations and creations as well. So there's weekly wellbeing telephone calls from coordinator, and I'm quite involved with the friendship group, so that is involving me. There's intergenerational friendly chat phone calls from Duke of Edinburgh scheme volunteers. So this was matching up people within this programme to volunteers who came forward from George Watson's school, who were part of the Duke of Edinburgh scheme, saying they would be willing to be supporting someone by telephone by way of conversation during this time, and that has worked really well and has been beneficial to both the, in this case, older person and the young people. That's been just great. At the end of March, just after lockdown began, the first issue of the Isolation Times was produced. So this is something I was putting together weekly since then. And participants in these programs have a weekly emailed or posted copy of the Isolation Times, which is an interactive zine magazine, also emailed to the carer support database. So this reaches maybe about 200 carers per week, in addition to the people living with dementia and carers who receive it through the friendship groups. Contributions from readers are welcome, and so the Isolation Times ends up in a kind of ongoing conversation. We've also now held Zoom meetings for chatting and singing at the request of the people involved, and because they've had equipment through the ELC programs provided that enabled them to be able to do that. And we accomplished this too with partner funding from the R.S. McDonald Charitable Trust. And these images that you see here that's one individual issue of the Isolation Times up in the left corner, and that's a set of them that I'm holding there down at the bottom. Just a few words of feedback about this aspect of our programs. The Isolation Times has certainly conveyed a sense of not being isolated. The information has all been so helpful and interesting, not least today's, and lovely to see all the friendly concern and best wishes for our welfare. I look forward to the next publication. As I have said before, I consider myself lucky in the friendship from the ELC. I enjoy reading these. They bring a ray of sunshine. Thank you from my love letter each week. This from a reader who's collecting all the printed copies that we post so that he has the full set. This is a snapshot of what we did during lockdown that was produced in, this must be mid-September. So the lunch delivery program delivered 5,500 lunches to vulnerable people between the 6th of April and the 10th of July with the help of over 70 volunteers. Daycare had an average 100 contacts per client per quarter, and this was support provided to people living with dementia and their carers and family. Over 160 hours per month of support were delivered. The Wellbeing Project, which was separately funded, ran for 3 months and supported 600 people with 684 attendances at the activity sessions on offer, and delivered support via 513 phone calls to carers and vulnerable people. And as of the week of 14th September, there had been 25 issues of the internal magazine, The Isolation Times, and 400 wellbeing calls were made to support carers with issues of health. All of this has been a continuing learning process for us and will be an ongoing process of learning for us. Some of the things that we're taking from this at the moment is the need for responsiveness, listening, flexibility, and funding. How much technology support and equipment can make all the difference for connection opportunities for people, as well as the importance of being able to provide, say, for example, the isolation times in print for people who are not connected online. The Zoom classes, emotional support calls, and online social gatherings activities have all been of real support to the people that we have been working with. The isolation times has been much welcomed, and readers say it helps reduce the sense of isolation and supports an ongoing sense of connectedness. We have so much gratitude for support and help from our project partners, from funders and from donations, and for learning and sharing of ideas. And in that vein, we would love to be able to share anything that we have learned that is of use to anyone else. So do please feel free to be in touch with us at the Eric Liddell Centre about that, and we look forward to talking with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Martha. What an amazing presentation, just showing the amount of work. I'm always blown away when I see just the sheer quantity of work that comes from the Eric Liddell Centre and the quality of it too. And it just strikes me just how these adaptations have just really enhanced what the Eric Liddell Centre already has been doing. So it's just so impressive. So thank you so much for sharing that, but more importantly for providing those services to local communities. It's really phenomenal. Really, really grateful. So moving on in that same vein. It's now my pleasure to introduce 2 people from Carers of West Lothian who you've met earlier in the panel Q&A session. So I'm going to introduce Jim Brown, who's a development worker from Carers of West Lothian, and Jill McGinty, who lives in West Lothian and is the carer for her mum, who has a diagnosis of dementia. Carers of West Lothian is a voluntary organisation offering a range of services that have been developed specifically to meet the needs of carers, including those who care for someone with a diagnosis of dementia. They offer a range of services that have been developed specifically to meet the needs of carers and their families, from carer support groups, recreational groups, and counselling to information, advice, and training. We'll be hearing from Jill, who cares for her mother who has dementia, but first I'll hand over to Jim Brown.
Hi, my name's Jim Brown. I'm a development worker with an organisation called Carers of West Lothian. The organisation was founded over 30 years ago by a group of carers, like-minded carers in West Lothian, who discovered a complete lack of support and information and advice available to them in their roles as carers, so they started an organisation themselves. We are currently now in Sycamore House in Quarrywood Court in Livingston and support carers of any condition, of any age within West Lothian. We have an adult team and we also have a young carers team as well. We now actually have moved in the last few years to Sycamore House, which gave us the opportunity to have a blank canvas to work on and make it a sort of tailor-made building that suits our needs. We have open spaces for training courses and for support groups. We have quiet rooms where people can go if they drop in for a chat. We also have rooms that we can use for counselling. There are rooms that we use for legal advice clinics and benefit advice clinics and power of attorney clinics that we organise for carers in West Lothian. We now have 6,000 carers almost on our database, which is quite a number. We're not obviously in contact with them all the time, but we send a quarterly newsletter out by their email or by post, just to keep people up to date with what we're doing, and training courses and any social event that we might have on, that gets advertised in the newsletter as well. Of that 6,000, I would say there are roughly 22 to 23% of that is carers of people with dementia. So we do have a large number of people that we work with on a regular basis. The service hasn't slowed down, we've just had to adapt it to be more online and on the telephone. We offer a great deal of listening ear support and just giving someone a chance to offload. I don't think that we can underestimate that, and I think especially in the times of COVID, it's a reassurance for carers to know that there's a voice at the other end of the line that they can call at any time. Carers are also offered condition-specific training courses. In the case of dementia, we work closely with the Dementia Link workers, so we provide a sort of balanced training course to the carers. They get good information about what's available to them support-wise from us, but they also get good first-hand knowledge from the specialist dementia nurses. So it works really well and has done since 2006. Really, we've run those courses and those support groups. Also, we do lots of social events. We do coffee mornings. We do peer support groups. We've done pampering sessions. During COVID, we've actually went out and delivered some nice afternoon teas to people that they can just for a bit of enjoyment for themselves and the person they're looking after. So it's quite a variety of stuff that we do. We always have been carer driven and carer led. Actually in the last 2.5 years, the council have actually asked us to also provide support and information to adults with physical or learning difficulties as well. So the service is always expanding, but dementia still probably remains the biggest part of the database that we deal with on a daily basis. We also have a very good counselling service, and occasionally the counselling service have run health and wellbeing courses. I think 3 of the biggest subjects that we deal with is dealing with guilt, coping with stress, and changing relationships. And we run courses round about that, around about these 3 topics, which carers we've ran quite a few of them over the years, and they seem to be very successful and very popular. Social side has obviously changed a little bit under COVID, but we have done a few events on Zoom. We have run family quizzes, we've run discos, we've run just social nights. So we are keeping up the service as best we can, but looking forward to being able to get back out and seeing people at some time, and making it a more personal service. I find that I think if I had £1 for every carer over the phone who's told me they were fine, then I'd be a very rich man. But it's a different case when you're sitting in front of them. You can look at people's body language, you can tell if there's any stress or but yeah, I'd be a very rich man for everybody who told me they're fine. I'm now going to let you see a small clip we have from one of our carers, Jill McGinty, who is a working carer and also has her mum who lives with her, who has a mixed diagnosis of Alzheimer's and vascular dementia. So I will let you watch that, and hopefully you get a better idea of what we do.
Hi, my name is Jill McGinty. I'm 54 years old and I care for my mum, who is 88, and she has Alzheimer's and vascular dementia. Mum was diagnosed in 2017, and in the middle of 2018, as a family, we had to make the decision, as it was apparent that mum was no longer able to live independently in her own home. So we moved to the house that we currently stay in, where mum now has a downstairs bedroom and her own wet room. And we obviously, it was a big change for all of us, but we've all adapted, and mum attends a dementia day centre 4 days a week, which is invaluable to us. I work part-time from home, so it enables me to work undisturbed while mum is away, having a great time with the people at her group. I found the Carers of West Lothian really by accident when I was looking through Facebook one day, and I noticed that they were advertising some workshops designed for carers, and it was all to do with mental health and well-being. And so I decided that I would sign up for a couple of those. They were absolutely fantastic. It was great to be in a room with like-minded people going through similar journeys and also very different journeys, because as a carer, you know, there's very many different types of carer, but at the end of the day, we are all there, and it was great just to be with like-minded people. From that, I was then invited to a social evening, where we went to the pub and had a nice meal, and through that I was told about a monthly support group that they hold for carers of people with dementia. I was initially a little bit reticent about whether I wanted to attend that, but along I went, with an open mind, and it was really one of the best things I've done. It was just amazing to be in a room with people where you don't feel judged if you're having a bad time. Where there's lots of laughter as well, because you have to really have a sense of humour through this dementia journey. But it's great to be with people that are going through similar situations, and just getting advice on different areas, different worries or problems that you might have. Unfortunately, in March, COVID came along, which put a stop on not only mum's daycare, but also my monthly support group. So that had a huge impact on us both. Dementia, as you know, any change in routine to somebody is a massive issue. So it became very difficult at times, especially with me still trying to continue to work, but mum being in the house. And it was very, very stressful at times. Thankfully, I was receiving at least weekly phone calls from Jim at the Carers of West Lothian, just to check in on how mum and I were doing. It was fantastic, the support. We were receiving e-bulletins giving us advice on COVID as things moved on. It was all new to everybody. Nobody really knew what was happening. So that was really helpful to get updates on the latest recommendations. We were also given information on how we could get PPE, and that was offered to be delivered to the house, which again was a huge relief, particularly when mum was shielding. They also had virtual clinics with advisors that were able to advise you on legal and benefit issues that you might be having. And there was also the social side of things. There was some quiz nights, they were showing films, and yeah, and then the night, one of the nicest thing personally I really enjoyed and mum enjoyed, we were delivered at home an afternoon tea, which was absolutely wonderful. Mum, it brought such a smile to my mum's face. It was just lovely to see, and it enabled us to sit down and just enjoy just a bit of time, quality time, me and mum together, with a lovely afternoon tea. It was such a kind gesture, which we really, really did appreciate. The situation is ongoing. Obviously, we're still going through this journey, and it's not easy. But for me, a huge reassuring thing is knowing that I have support at the end of the phone or by email. Mum sees her daycare centre as her safe place. I very much see the carers of West Lothian as my safe place. It's somewhere I know I can go to, I can turn to them in good and bad times. And I know that if there's anything I need, I can just pick up the phone, which is a huge weight off my shoulders, really, because you can end up feeling really quite isolated and alone if you don't have that kind of support. So for me, it's a huge thing. Like I say, it's still a road that we're all travelling, and I just am glad that I've got that support there whenever I need it.
Thank you so much, Jim and Jill. What a great account of the support that is provided through organisations like the Carers of West Lothian and people like Jill, who we will hear more from on our Q&A panel. So thank you so much for that sharing of your experiences. It really is so significant and so important. So at this point, I'd like to open up our question and answer panel, and would like to invite my fellow panelists back on the stage again. So welcome back to Arlene Crockett, to Jim Brown, Siobhan Key, Julia Mackenzie, Karen Tom, Jess Wade, and Jill McGinty. Thank you so much for rejoining us on here for the second round of questions. We have a shorter time. We've just got 15 minutes for this slot. So I've identified from the questions that we had submitted 3 questions to try and hopefully will bring things together for us, and including going back, revisiting the question about examples, which is one of the questions that was raised for the second slot as well. But I'm going to kick off with the first one. And I guess maybe I'll start off with Jess with this one. And it's a question about really about priorities and empowering local people. And the question is, how do you think services can better equip themselves to listen more and do less? Which is a great question. We all should do that. So what's your top tips for actually doing that? How do we do it?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. I think one of the things is probably goes back to what I was saying before about trying to make sure that you have involvement from your service users. So for us, that would be carers, and for other organisations, that might be people living with dementia, or whoever the service is aimed at every level of the organisation. So for us, we're a carer-led organisation, so our board is made up predominantly of people with caring experience, either current or in their recent history. So, that obviously means that we've got their input kind of at the highest level of the organisation. But then you have to remember that that still isn't enough, because not everybody wants to come to a meeting. Not everybody wants to, sit around the table and read all the board papers and all of that. Some people just want to be able to say, listen, I've got an idea for a service or what have you. So I think the key then is it's about welcoming feedback. So some of it is about culture, organizational culture, and setting a culture that says, so, we often say in our organization, all feedback is welcome. And then, we need to have a think about it and whether what we can do about it. But, we welcome everything. We always thank people for their feedback, no matter what it is. Because that's really important, because they're giving us something when they share their thoughts with us.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is just recognizing, linking those two together really. everybody's got different ways to input. So you've got to have plenty of opportunity. So it's surveys, it's focus groups, it's meetings, it's you know, just picking up the phone or being available for people to talk to you, because everybody wants to contribute in a different way. And that's hard for organisations, you know, because we all want to be able to tick a box to say, oh, we did that, we spoke to some people and that's off our list, but this is never off your list. This is the way you work every single day. It's never, ever off your list. So that's the thing to remember, I think.
Great, thank you. I'm sure lots of you would resonate with what Jess has said and probably add to it. But I think it really reflects that whole idea that came up earlier about having variety of approaches and not going with the one size fits all, because that's never going to work really. But and being open to it, which is I think a really powerful message across all of the things we're hearing today. So thank you for that. The second question was submitted, I think, really around the whole idea around specialist personalized support, but I want to open that up into a more general question, which is around the issues and challenges involved in providing personalized support more generally to families and carers. And I mean, you all come from very, not different, but complementary perspectives in all of this. And I think that the challenges around how do we really reach out and provide personalized support, I think, is something we've been hearing about all morning, I think, and we all know is a significant challenge. So I wonder if you have some thoughts about this idea about how we offer it, how we kind of make support personalized to families and carers in a way that has got meaning and depth. And Jill, I'm going to pick on you if you don't mind, because you've got the lived experience, to use that interesting phrase. You know, whether you would like to kick off with that. I mean, what works for you in terms of personalized support?
It's a very personal thing, and I think it can be individual to each person and their circumstances. I know for myself, as I say, Mum was diagnosed in 2017, and thankfully things have improved since then, because I did hear after that about the service that the Alzheimer's Scotland provide, in terms of that upon a diagnosis, they offer you those sessions where you can go and get advice about, you know, power of attorney. They have people that come in to speak to you know, they've got solicitors and doctors. So that, I think, is invaluable, and I would have absolutely loved to have had that at the point when Mum was diagnosed. So I'm really relieved that's something that I think is important at point of diagnosis, that you're kind of made aware of what is available out there. Again, the carers of West Lothian, I just found by chance, and I think perhaps maybe the social workers is maybe something that they should be referring or suggesting to people when they make contact with families. Quite rightly, you know, the social workers are there to concentrate on your loved one and the person that has the diagnosis. But I didn't realise at the time, thought I could do everything myself and that I wouldn't need help. And it becomes very apparent very quickly that you can't. And at that point, you've maybe lost the, you know, you've been signed off by the social worker team, so you're kind of at a loss as to where to go. And unless you have access to the computer and, you know, you're a person that is proactively looking for help, there's a worry that people really are going to slip through the net. And like you say, would get to crisis point, perhaps, you know, it would be the point where they really are on their knees before a GP or somebody might say, hey, have you tried contacting XYZ? And I think you need to try and get to the people before that crisis point.
Yeah. Great, thank you. I think that really highlights that whole issue again about, you know, the way things need to join up and the way people are highlighted through our different services and systems, which is an ongoing challenge that we seem to strive to try and get beyond, really. Jim, do you want to come in?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to say, I think Jill actually kind of slipped through the net a bit with us, because we weren't aware when her mum had a diagnosis, but I have to give credit to the dementia link workers in West Lothian. We have a really excellent relationship with them, and I normally get something like 150 referrals a year from families. But pre-COVID, I would have actually went out to the person's house, the carer's house, and met both the carer and the person that we're looking after and developed a relationship there. And I think that's the time to be able to do it, is to get in there right at the start, after the post-diagnostic workers have been, after the diagnosis has been given, and you can start building relationships very early on, because it is that stupid saying that people don't know what they don't know. Nobody knows what to ask for because nobody knows who's there. So it relies on organisations other than ourselves referring carers on to people like ourselves. The earlier you can, the better. But certainly building good relationships with the older people's acute care team, the mental health team, sorry, and the dementia consultants and the older people's psychiatry is a good way to go.
Yeah. Great, thanks. I'm just conscious of my time, and I do want to give those people a chance to give their example, because I think it also feeds into this whole idea around personalized support. So if those of you on the panel also want to give some examples, feel free to put them into the chat, because everybody can pick them up from there. But I wanted to go back to this idea of more examples, because again, there have been a number of questions that are seeking further examples on top of what we've heard. So I want to go back to those panelists who have not asked in the first round, and kick off with Siobhan, in terms of, if you were to identify your key example that would be illustrative of how best to go about this kind of work, what would it be for you?
Yeah, I think we've had some good examples of how things are working during COVID, and an event that myself and one of my colleagues ran out in St John's during Dementia Awareness Week, was we had this idea of sort of trying to promote togetherness during a time of sort of social distancing. And at that time, during COVID and stuff, we'll all be aware that visiting had stopped, and the difficulties and the challenges that caused people. So rather than, we've been promoting the virtual video visiting through WhatsApp and Facebook and things like that, but what we managed to do was create a space where we could invite carers into the hospital, and we could only have 2 or 3 people at the same time because of the social distancing, but we were actually able to bring together families who hadn't seen their loved ones for, in one case it had been 8 weeks, and we were able to, and again, it's one of the themes that I'm picking up from today is that the importance of cake and tea, and having that opportunity, and again it kind of feeds into what Jill was saying at the beginning. It was actually just an opportunity for one of the family members that the story sort of really still sticks with me today, and it was a good day at work for me, was he just really enjoyed being able to be a father and a son, rather than being seen as a visitor having to come in and speak to nursing staff, and actually just sitting and having that father-son relationship. And where his dad was, he wasn't quite sure how many more opportunities he would have to have that, so that was really important. But I guess what we're doing from an NHS Lothian perspective is that I'm going to be going around all the health and social care partnerships, and I'm really keen to link in with anybody that's on the conference today to find out what's worked well during COVID. Is there learning from this that we need to start looking at how we implement it at the services? Because what we've got is really good stuff going on in lots of different areas in Lothian, and what I'm trying to do is be that person that brings it all together and share that across the 4 health and social care partnerships as well as the acute sites.
Thank you. And Jess, maybe I'll ask, because Jess and Jim still, but maybe I'll ask, because you're both the same organisation, maybe if you just give us one example that would illustrate the work you do, that you would put up there to say this is what could really happen.
Okay, just a quick one from me. So we've been doing for quite a while now what we call Think Carer sessions with staff from the Health and Social Care Partnership, just to help them think about what the issues facing carers and how can they make sure that they're supporting them as well. But one of the things that we're looking at doing to take it forward further is linking with that idea about community support that's come out as a theme today so much, and looking at how can we deliver sessions actually for people in the community to help people think about actually how can they look out for carers in their own community, and what support can they offer and what more can they be doing. So that's sort of one in the pipeline to watch out for, but that's something that we'll be looking at.
Thank you. And Jill, I'm just going to give you the final word, your key message to all of us on the panel.
Oh, is this to me? Sorry, wasn't sure if you'd said me or Jim.
Oh, sorry, Jill.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Your key message to all of us. You have the last word.
Oh, well, as a carer, I really want to thank everybody for today. It's been absolutely great to sort of be there as a voice for carers, and for the support that I personally receive is fantastic. I don't know where I would be without the support that I've been getting, particularly through COVID. It's just been great to see how the services have been able to adapt to our needs, and to know that there's plenty of people on the end of the phone for us when we need them. So thank you.
That's great to hear, and thank you for that. So that brings to an end our second Q&A session. So can I just thank all of the panelists for your time and for being so open and honest about what you're doing, but also for sharing some fantastic work, which is really the key focus on today, is to engage in that key learning. So thank you so much, and you can now leave the stage. We're now moving into the final part of our morning and afternoon, and it's my pleasure to hand over to Arlene Crockett and Colin McBrearty from Life Changes Trust, who are going to talk about today's event and the next steps in creating better lives.
Many thanks, Brendan. I'm not sure that I can follow Jill, so I will do my very best, everyone. And can also just say a huge thanks to Brendan for chairing today. I think you'll agree he's done a fantastic job. First, I'd like to say it's so good to see this conference taking place, and to say that this is actually our first online community and dementia conference. We'd actually planned to do this one in April, but had to change our plans due to the pandemic. Collaboration's always been really key to the success of the Trust regional influence and work, and this event is no exception. The planning group, who've come together over the last few months, have done a fantastic job. It's been really important to hear directly about what matters to people living with dementia in Edinburgh and the Lothians, and also the response and support provided by local projects. Communities have been key to how people with dementia and unpaid carers have remained connected during these difficult months, and it has been great to hear from a few of them today about this work and how they have really stepped up and adapted what they do. I want to take a few minutes, if I may, to talk to you about the importance of this event as we all move forward and use the learning, conversations and connections to continue to make change happen across Edinburgh and the Lothians. This is our 6th event in a series of 14 collaborative learning opportunities, and all so far have been really important in how we influence local dementia policy and practice. The learning from the conference and the storytelling sessions to which the priorities have been taken are providing a real insight to IJBs and others in what really matters to people living with dementia and their unpaid carers. It's also been really important to listen to those who provide support, as often the themes are not very different. We believe, and the evidence tells us, this is how future strategies should be designed and developed, a collective effort ensuring the voice of beneficiaries are driving change. To put this in context a bit, if I may, for a minute or two, I want to quickly share the impact of this so far in other areas. In Orkney, we hosted the event in May 2019, and in September of this year, we witnessed the approval of their first dementia strategy, all reflecting the learning and partnership approach that we have seen here today. IJB members there said it was how future strategies should be developed. We hosted the Grampian regional event in March of 2019, and are now working with the IJB in Aberdeenshire to finalise their dementia strategy. Both regional events have been a significant part of their development. Their success is a combination of good leadership, genuine collaboration, and an agreement that change is necessary, with a strong evidence base to support it. Added to this, is the importance of evaluation and learning. All of the learning from the Edinburgh and Lothian regional event will be available on the Trust website, so that it can be used by local projects and programmes, some of which we've seen here today. And we are also open at the Trust to have further conversations with IJBs and others about what we can do to make sure the priorities are realised in planning and future decisions. So now I'd like to hand over to Colin, our funding manager in the Dementia programme. He's going to say a wee bit more about our regional events programme, around the grants that we offer, These have been underway since 2019 and are a key part of our regional influencing work. So Colm, over to you.
Thanks very much, Arlene. So my name's Colm and I'm the funding manager and the dementia programme. And I'm also the last turn before lunch, so I will try not to take up too much of your time, although it is a privilege really to kind of follow on from everybody who has been on earlier today, who seem to be doing so much more valuable and important work than I am. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Creating Better Lives in Edinburgh and Lothians Small Grants programme. So this was one of 14 rounds of funding that is designed to sort of complement each of the regional events that we're doing throughout Scotland. This should have been in Murrayfield, so I suppose in a sense I'm glad that I'm talking to a screen from my bedroom rather than standing in front of 200 people in Murrayfield. But here we are. So we set aside £150,000 for the Edinburgh and Lothians NHS region. And £135,000 of that is for grants to projects, and £15,000 is for a learning network coordinator, more of which I'll talk about in a little minute. So we're offering small grants of £2,000 up to £15,000 for projects that can run for up to 18 months. So if you do the maths, that's £150,000 in 14 regions. It actually turns very small grants into over £2 million worth of investment all over Scotland. But the emphasis on these grants is very much on local projects, local services, local activities, and local people. So Creating Better Lives in Edinburgh and the Lothians was launched at the start of August 2020 alongside 3 other regions. Of course, the world we're living in at the minute, we're relying on online promotion, sort of our existing networks, social media, including my 100 followers on Twitter, and other sort of third sector groups and other organisations to pass the word on about these. We remained open for telephone and email inquiries. Under normal circumstances, we'd have been getting on trains and buses and getting out into Edinburgh and the Lothians to have drop-in sessions in the community, but we couldn't do that. So we had a Zoom session at the end of August before we closed to applications at the start of September 2020. So we received 15 applications to Edinburgh and Lothians, which was the second highest number of applications that we'd received to any of the rounds. And it's at this point where I have to sort of acknowledge the vital role of the decision panel, because for these regional grants, the Life Changes Trust do not decide which applications get funded. We're asking for the help of regional panels, which are typically made up of people living with dementia, unpaid carers, and a variety of professionals with local knowledge and local experience. Of the 15 applications, I'm very pleased to say that 11 were successful. Unfortunately, 4 were unsuccessful, but that's because there's simply never enough money to go round. The local panel that we had some very, very difficult and tough decisions to make. But with some creative budgeting, we were still actually able to invest £152,000 in projects in Edinburgh and the Lothians. So of the 11 successful applicants, a couple are super fast in getting through the bureaucracy and the administration that we ask for. And we're delighted to say that, we're going to be working with organisations like Dementia Friendly East Lothian, Queensferry Care, and the Eric Liddell Centre. When they're all through due diligence, we'll probably put a little message up on our website so you can read more about them. And instead of just giving them a small grant, we also bring them into what we call a learning network. And so soon we're going to be appointing a learning network coordinator, and they will work with the successful applicants over the next 12 months and 18 months, however long their project lasts, to give them a little bit more. It's not as if we're just giving them a small grant and saying cheerio. They're going to be part of a network where they can share learning and best practice tips about getting money from other funders and various other things, just a little bit of additional support. So basically the Edinburgh and Lothians grants programme are feeding into an external evaluation that we're going to be doing, and we hope that that external evaluation, we can use that to share that among other funders and service providers, with the government, with anybody who's interested, about the value of investing in local projects, in community groups. Some of these applicants are very, very low capacity organisations that have never had a grant before, and this has given them such a confidence boost. We also hope that it will show to other funders the value of making small grants, which can often be of very sort of low value in monetary terms, but they're very, very high value with the impact of what they're doing for people in the local community. We also want to kind of highlight the importance of having that panel of local people with local experience and bringing their skills and knowledge, rather than somebody like me sitting in Glasgow that doesn't really know what it's like to be a carer or to be living with dementia in Edinburgh and the Lothians. You won't be surprised to know that a lot of the themes from the applications that have came through are very similar to what came up in the storytelling sessions. And of course, the two key things are the shocking impact of COVID-19 and also the importance of the work done by and the need to support unpaid carers. Those are the two strongest themes that have come through these applications. And my final word will be to say, it would be remiss of me not to mention it, is that we have opened our Caring for the Carer Fund, which is offering money directly to unpaid carers. So it's time for the carers to think of themselves. So have a look on our website. There's more information about that there. Thank you very much. I will pass back to Arlene.
Many thanks, Colin. Yeah, it's been really quite interesting and exciting to see the regional grants grow and develop since we did our first regional event back in Highlands in 2018. So congratulations in advance to all those that have been successful, and I'm sure we'll hear more about them very soon. So it leaves me just to now hand back over to Brendan, and just in behalf of the Life Changes Trust to say many thanks to everyone who has been involved in putting together today's event. But I'll not say any more because I don't want to steal Brendan's thunder. So over to you, Brendan.
Thanks so much, Arlene, and thanks, Colin, as well. So that does just leave it for me to bring the amazing event to a close. I'm just conscious we're slightly over our time, but I hope you'll bear with me just for a couple of minutes while we do some thanks and some reflections. I just want to do a couple of reflections because I've had the privilege of chairing this event and sitting through these amazing explications of some fantastic work. And obviously it has impacted on me as much as it has impacted on you, I'm sure. And there's just three short points I want to make really to try and capture that. The first one is the importance and the power of stories. If ever I needed convincing about the importance of stories, then today is it. But I think more importantly, I think we all need to think about, it's not just about hearing these stories, but it is how do we develop a shared ownership of them and a collective responsibility for doing something with them. And it's something that I am seriously going to give some thought to as I move away from here. The second issue is a question that has been in my head for a while, but certainly has come through today, which is what's normal anyway? And you know, the incredible work that has been presented here today really turns the whole idea of normal on its head and actually demonstrates that even something as severe as COVID is not going to stop the passion and commitment and hard work of local communities to find solutions. And fundamentally, that is what local communities do. And we are now in that space, and that is just wonderful to see that happening. And finally, I guess the comment about, for all of us, a question around learning, really. And you know, my head is full with so many ideas, and I guess the question for all of us is, how do we put these ideas out to the world, and how will you do it? So Colin might only have 100 followers on Twitter, but I know a lot of us on here have a lot further and many more followers. So I think we can get the word out there and really do everything we can to share this amazing learning from today. And I am very proud to be a nurse for a very long time, but I'm more proud to leave today feeling very humbled about what I hear, because it's incredible. And thank you for all of you for sharing that experience with me and everyone else. So finally, I just want to thank everyone who has participated in today and made today happen. I want to thank our panelists. Really grateful for all the work you're doing, but also for sharing so generously during the question and answer time, and engaging so well with that. So thank you for that. I particularly want to thank the Life Changes Trust for the work that they are doing and you are doing in this field, and really making a huge difference to local communities, and really supporting those communities. And as we've just heard about the ongoing funding, providing even more support to this incredibly important local work that genuinely is creating better lives, and the evidence speaks for itself. And thank you to all the support team who have made me look smooth here and have ensured that I've been turning on and turning off at the right time, and that I've been connected with what's happening. So thank you for all that support in making that happen. Finally, just to remind you, everyone will be emailed with a link to the recording of the webinar, and other useful information will be coming your way as well. So thank you to all of you for participating, for posing questions, for taking part, for engaging in the chat, which has been really active, and for generally doing the work that you do. Let's just keep on doing it and continuing to make everybody's life better. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.